Hello, and welcome to the Oracle of Light. I'm Shauna Domalain. I'm a lifelong medium and certified life coach. And making the connection with the afterlife has brought me the greatest joy. Since losing my son, Jack, I have navigated grief, heartache, and despair. And it was through connecting with my son on the other side that my heart began to heal, and I was able to find joy and meaning in my life again. Now, I'm inviting you into this space as I explore the afterlife, the grieving process, and rebuilding after loss. If you'd like to discover the spirit world and how to move through the loss of a loved one or child, you have come to the right place. This is the Oracle of Light. You are listening to the Oracle of Light. I am your host, Shauna Domalain, and I am just so excited today for this conversation. I have the lovely Charlotte Lomenda. Did I say that right? Lomenda?
You did.
Lomenda?
You did.
Okay. Yep. And she is a psychic medium and a healer. She's also here in the city that I'm in Canada. We are in Calgary, Alberta. I am just so excited that you're here today, and I can't wait for everyone to hear your story and your insights. So welcome.
Thank you so much. You know what? I'm uber excited to be here. I've been a fan of yours. I've been watching your stuff. I've been following you for a while now. So we're friends on Facebook, and I think I've watched a couple of your Instagrams. I've followed you. I've seen you grow, and you're just insanely wonderful. So yay, thank you for having me.
Aw, that is so fantastic. Thank you so much. It's always nice to, meet someone that gets this world. And so, yeah, we could probably talk for 6 hours straight, but here my guys are like, okay, let's get some work done. We can chat.
I know I got my guides going, reel it in, Charlotte, just reel it in.
Reel it in, right?
Yeah.
All right. Will you start us off telling us how all of this started for you with your near-death experience, and how you stepped into your gifts and all of your beautiful capacities with mediumship and spirit?
Well, it's interesting. So quickly, I had a near death. So I was in a very bad accident when I was 34. And when I had the accident, my body rose above, and I could see the vehicles on the highway down below. And I remember seeing what I didn't even know, my body being taken in the ambulance going over the hill. And at the time, I was just in this euphoria. Like, I could hear my kids were in the vehicle, and by the grace of God, they were fine. By the grace of God, they were fine. But I could hear them. And when I went into the ambulance, that's when everything went black. And so I remember rising above and just being surrounded by this white and yellow light, and the only word I could use to describe it was euphoria, and I didn't even know what that word meant, but it was just peace. It was calm. It was love. It was amazing. And that's when I heard this man's voice saying, "It's not your time. You need to go back." And I didn't even know what that all meant. So flash forward to being the next thing I know, I wake up in the hospital and I'm covered head to toe in bandages, and I had a concussion, broken, like all of this was a write-off. My left side was a write-off. Then 4 months after that, or after I got out of the hospital, I remember just wanting to walk towards that light that I had felt. Mm-hmm. And I remember driving shortly after I got out of the hospital. And I literally pulled over to the side of the road and walked towards the sun because I wanted to get that feeling again. And and even walking towards the sun, I felt that energy that I felt the first time. And just this love, immense love that I had for everything, everyone. And I was going through a rough patch with my now ex-husband. And that's the reason why I had left and took my kids on this trip. I wanted to just air out my head and just wanted to know if I was doing the right thing, if I was making the right choice. So I thought, I'm just going to take the kids. We're going to go away and have this incredible, weekend away from that energy, that space, and just really sit with it. And when I came back, I had this love for him as well. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try to do my best and if I can do my best to do what I feel like I have to do to make this relationship work, that's what I'm going to do. And so 4 months went by, and I was in that love state again. But then about the 4 months, and I'm like, I don't know, it's still not feeling right. Still not feeling right. Then I had a stroke. When I had the stroke, the left side of my body went paralyzed. I was partially paralyzed for probably about, I want to say, for several months. So I had to really focus on trying to get it to work, because this is my dominant hand, was my left.
Yeah.
And so when I had the stroke, the energy inside of me was incredible. I didn't know what it was. I had no clue what was going on. And I was vibrating. I was vibrating when I would go out in public after I had the stroke. So again, I'm trying to, facilitate this arm. And in hindsight, it was actually quite funny, because I'm left-handed. So I had to style my hair, and I do like my hair. So I had to figure out how to use a brush and blow dryer with my right hand. Well, my right hand sitting there going, I don't know what the crap you're doing. So I went to my left and I just styled. I had to do, and the makeup, and it was crazy. It was hilarious. If there was a camera somewhere, I swear to God, bloopers all over it. But anyway, got that side of me back. But then the energy thing wasn't going away. And I would go out in public, and I'd be feeling myself, but then I'd be looking around and I'd be like, what the crap? Like, I would just start to vibrate, and it would be the energy from the people, the energy from me. And what I now understand and believe for me was spirit on the other side. So I got all of this energy, just going crazy. And I had no clue what was going on. I literally thought I was losing my mind.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, so it was, I know we'll talk about this in a bit, my guides guiding me to this new me. And it was just a lot. It was a lot at one time. And so, then I started to hear people who had crossed over, and I would hear them on Facebook. And then even with my brother, which was substantial. I don't want to leap too far ahead, but so just, that was that was my near death. It was like there was a couple things that kind of led from the near death to the stroke, and then all of that stuff that kind of, it just little doors opening, and it was all of a sudden it just felt like the garage door opened. Not so much the closets.
Yeah.
It's like the full-on garage door was opening. Yeah, and it was it was a little overwhelming. It was overwhelming. Yes.
I
Beautiful.
imagine.
Beautiful though. Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love hearing people's experiences from near death. I love hearing what it felt like, what it looked like, I love hearing that. And I think it's just so powerful. And I think it's a beautiful confirmation that there is more, This isn't it. Someone said to me the other day, well, we're just worm food, so I don't know who you're talking to. I said, well, you know what, if that's what you believe, that's cool. You do you, I do me. And so it's amazing. So you heard this voice, and so you saw yourself. I'm thinking of the movie Ghost, right? Like, he sees himself, and then you hear this voice that this isn't your time. It's fascinating.
Well, and so here's the interesting thing, what I now know in hindsight. I've always had these, when I look back at my growing up, my childhood, I've always had this, you can relate, I know you can, but the things that stick out in my mind, I was like, in my adult life, I look back and I go, oh, I would always sense things. I always had this sense. And I didn't know what that was at that time, because I'm so small, right? But I remember, this one specific time. So just a brief, my childhood was, I had an abusive stepfather and an alcoholic stepfather and an alcoholic mother. And I remember being in the truck one time. There there was a fight going on. They left me in the truck, and it was pitch black. It was winter. And I remember sitting in the truck waiting for them to do whatever it is that they were doing, and sitting on the console of the truck, and the way that the truck light was sitting on my head. I had a toque on, and the light of the truck just surrounded the top of my head. And in that moment, when I should be stressed and afraid, and I probably was about 7-ish, 8-ish,
Yep.
I felt such peace because I had the way that the light was surrounding my head, and I knew what was going on, but I felt safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know how I felt safe, but I just felt safe. Yep. So I found that, that was one of those things I was like, well, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. And so when I heard, I went to a movie several years after my near death, and I remember sitting in the theater. So I'm holding all of this experience that I had in, because my husband at the time was atheist. So I couldn't really talk to him. No judgment, right? So I couldn't really say anything to him. And I remember I did speak up and say something, and he just kind of went, and I went, okay, well, we're going to drop that conversation real quick.
Yes.
But and I remember going to this movie with my oldest daughter, who was in the accident with me, and her best friend. We went to this movie. I wanted to go and see it. And it was about this little boy who had a near-death experience. And the whole time that I'm watching, I just got overwhelmed and I started crying. Because that was the first time that it just really sunk in that's what I had. That's what I experienced. So we left the theater, and I just went blah, to my daughter and her bestie, and they're just like, hey Mom, I'm gonna help you with the buckles in the back. It's okay. So again, I got silenced, just out of fear, and I understand that. So yeah, it was, in hindsight, I went, okay, so I could see where the synchronicities were. I could see where it was catapulting to, no, Charlotte, this is the way we want you to go. And I feel like that's where, the big JC he said that voice, and that's who I know who that was now. I recognize who that was now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was quite amazing.
I love that. That's amazing. And it's interesting because I trying to think off the top of my head if I know of any, mediums, intuitives, psychics, healers who haven't had a tumultuous childhood. I can't think of any. You know what I mean? Like I think of a couple. I think, I don't think they had. I mean, everybody has trauma to some degree. Everybody has upsets and disappointments and stuff. But just, when you start to look at it, it's just like, wow, okay, this is fascinating, right? Like, it's just like, interesting. I remember someone saying to me once, she said, well, if you work through so much difficulty, it means that you have a bigger calling, right? And at times I'd be like, well, I've had enough of the difficulty. Let's just get this shit going. Let's just get this show on the road already, right? Mm. And I find that so interesting, right? It's just, I remember when my gifts, I saw spirit from childhood. I called them the see-through people. And when my gifts started to reawaken after an accident I was in after my daughter was born, I remember hearing voices. I thought I was going crazy. I thought, oh my God, they're going to lock me up. And I would smell cigarette smoke. It was after they passed the bylaw here in Calgary that you couldn't smoke in restaurants. And we were in a restaurant, and I'm like, someone's smoking. Did you smell that? Someone's smoking. Oh my God. And my family, they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, is that a stroke? Is that a stroke? What is that? Right. And I'm like losing it. And this had been happening for weeks. And then finally I was out for a walk one day, and up ahead of me, there was this big, beautiful ball of light in the sky, and it was shimmering and glimmering, and it was just beautiful. And I froze, and there was no one else around. And I heard, my name is John. And I froze, and it was just like, John. Who is that? It's my grandfather. So he's my dad's dad. And so, my grandfather, John, and my grandmother, Monica, they came through first right out of the gates. And that's how my awakening started. Right. So it's beautiful. And now you mentioned your brother. Would you share a little bit more about your brother?
Well, so my brother, Colin, he took his life when he was, I believe he was 34 when he took his life, which I find interesting. He took his life when he was 34, and he was the strongest one. that came forward for me. So I find it quite lovely that you had shared with your grandfather and your grandma. In hindsight, my grandma came forward, just to deviate, going through a stressful divorce. I had to take my ex-husband to court, and I didn't have a lawyer. So I had to represent myself and fight to get child support. I remember sitting on the C train, stressed out of my freaking mind, and this is before Colin had passed. And I remember hearing my grandma's voice tell me, "You're going to be okay." Because I was just heading into court. I've never been to court. Are you kidding me? I remember going into court, and on the C train, I remember her saying, "You're going to be okay." And I went, and I just, the weight. And I went, okay, bang on, yippee skippy, nailed that, won, yay. So flash forward, and then Colin had passed. With Colin, when he committed suicide. So we're all sitting down at my sister's, and I remember, and again, not fully understanding, I didn't know what was going on with me, sitting down, and I remember he showed me, in the depth of this mourning, it would have been a few hours after they had found his body, we met. And I remember him showing me that he was surrounded by white light. And I remember he showed me he's had his arms out, and everybody always used, like, I always thought he looked like Jesus. I kid you not. And he was surrounded by this beautiful white light. So my family's outside, but my stepmom was inside, and she's obviously overwhelmed. We're sitting there. I'm overwhelmed. I looked at her, again, not understanding what's going on, and I told her, he just showed me, as I'm crying, that he is surrounded by white light. The peace that it gave her was incredible. Yes. Because I'm baptized Christian, and the belief that, they go to Neverland or whatever,
yeah,
I felt is wrong based on my experience of what he was showing me, letting me know he was at peace.
Yes.
So I could share that with my family. So he came through visually. He was helping me plan his service on the other side. So he was telling me to tell my sister what colors he liked, because my sister was planning my sisters were planning the service. And I'm sitting here still, again, not fully understanding what the actual is going on. He's telling me, well, my favorite color is blue. And I didn't know that about Colin. So Callie's going, yeah, that was his favorite color. And I went, okay, well, that's what he just told me. And she's like, okay. And so, like, all of this stuff. So I'm hearing him, I'm seeing him, I'm sensing him, I'm smelling him because he smoked. And so I can, all of this stuff. And I remember going to meditate over by Elbow Falls.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting on the rocks there and just being pulled. I wasn't really that huge into meditation, but my soul was starting to guide me to that. So I remember sitting there, and my friend was off because she was just like, "You do you, boo. I'm gonna pick rocks." And I went, okay. So I went over and I did that. And then all of a sudden, Colin was literally right beside me when I was doing this meditation. Like, he came forward so clearly, and the peace that he brought me. And then he also helped me develop that, giving his daughters, he left behind 2 daughters.
Yeah.
So he wanted me to comfort them. But at the same time, I had to use a little bit of discretion because they were younger. So I didn't, I was still trying to figure out all of this stuff. But I wanted them to know that he was okay, because of course they're distraught. And he was giving them all these signs. And I was like, I have to tell them, like, I have to share with them that this is him. This is him with him, So I did, and it did give them peace, and it was giving them solace, and that was all I wanted to do. That was the whole intent. So to say that, he was the loudest, which kind of speaks volumes for his personality, because he was that guy. And he was making jokes on the other side.
Yeah.
Just briefly, again, going through all of this stuff, and I remember waking up, I think it was probably a day or 2 after he had passed. And again, I'm still kind of distraught. And I remember him pulling the plug out of our toaster oven. And I remember going downstairs first thing in the morning, and I'm screaming at my kids. I'm like, why do you guys, like, Riley and Matt? And I actually screamed, Colin. I was going, Colin, like, why are you doing that? And I, again, not knowing what's going on, my son was like, Mom, it's not Colin, it's Riley. So I was like, oh, sorry, buddy. I'm sorry. Just, and he goes, I didn't unplug the toaster. And I said, Madison, did you? And she's like, no, why would I unplug the toaster oven? It was Colin. He was sitting there playing jokes, and I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, that was part. And just quickly, I have to share another one. He was the one that was guiding me to move. So my poor kids, honest to God. But so I think I did find out what was going on with me. So we had his car that he took his life in his car. So I took his car after he had passed, parked it in the back alley. My kids weren't really warm and fuzzy about that, but it was just what I felt like I needed to do. Mm-hmm. So I took his car, and it was okay. I took his car, and I think it was about Halloween-ish. And again, this stands to truth about true testament of who my brother was. So my son was with me. It was pitch black. The horn in my brother's car went off, and it just kept going off randomly. I knew it was Colin. I knew he was playing with him. My son was literally crapping his pants. He's like, I'm like, come with me because we got to shut this off. He's like, I am not stepping foot outside of this. But again, I knew it was Colin, but he's my biggest guide. I've got other guides, but he's one of my main ones that brought me to understanding the transition I was going through with the loveliness that was being opened up inside of me. The seeing, the feeling, the sensing, the hearing, the smelling, all of it. Mm-hmm. And he was the one that gave it first. Like Grandma was the first one with hearing. Yep. My mom, I saw her and I sent her. So it was just, but Colin was the one that really just went boom. So yeah, huge. Yeah.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. His energy is big and loud.
Yeah.
I'm here and this is happening. I love that. And I think that, I wasn't really sure how things were going to start to unfold when my gifts really started to rear their head again. And I was guided to have Reiki. And it was in Reiki that I was like, I felt like I'd been plugged back in again. And I thought, I have to learn this. I need to learn this. What is this? And so I became a Reiki master teacher. And then out of nowhere, people started asking, do you do Reiki? And I'm like, yes. And so I started offering Reiki sessions. And then it was in the Reiki sessions that the loved ones started to come in again. I'm like, nicely played. Nicely played, you guys. I'm like, that was good. Yeah, that was good. Right. And it's beautiful. And I find there was a TikTok I did maybe a month or two ago, and it was on suicide. And it was from my perspective, right? Like, and they're very, it's a very delicate situation, and it's a very delicate circumstance that we talk about. And it's, how much can we share, because our soul's journey is our soul's journey. And when someone transitions in that way, they're still very much a part of our life. They're still alive in spirit. And that is part of their growth and their journey and their experience. And so I love that. I love that you can share that experience about what happened with Colin, because I think people think, that they, if someone takes their life, that they're damned to hell and they're gone and nothing happens to them and they're bad and they're this and they're that and they're so selfish. And it's like, no, they're just in so much pain that is literally the only way that they can stop it. And that's it. It's done. And so I love that. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to talk about, because it's one of those topics that, it brings up a lot of discussion around that. Mm-hmm.
Well, and just briefly too, I realize now that Colin was my teacher. Colin is a teacher. And I do feel like now that he's on the other side, I feel like his capability to teach is stronger than it was here. Yeah. I feel like, yes, it is absolutely devastating However, I do recognize that a lot of the stuff that he was feeling, I have gone through.
Yeah.
I've experienced that. And
Mhm.
I know that he is letting me know what he feels he wished he could have done, had the tools to implement in his healing process, but he didn't.
Yeah.
And I feel like I he taught me a lot, and I'm learning, and I recognize my own wounds. I recognize my own inner pain. I
Mhm.
recognize that I want to take his teachings from the other side, his guidance from the other side, to do better, to pay witness, and just teach. He teaches on the other side, I teach on this side, and we're learning together. And that's part of the process for me, is to teach those to do better through his experience,
Yeah.
through my experience, and just doing both and being able to help and heal those on the physical plane.
Mhm. And I love that you shared that. Thank you. There was someone who, and I have permission to share whenever I share stories about clients, because the work is sacred. I had a family who their beloved son and brother had taken his life, and it was fascinating when he came through in the reading, and he said, having gone through his life review and having looked at everything that he experienced while he was here in the physical, and having that experience, he said he realized that there were other ways. He realized that there were other options, that he simplified it. He said, I thought I only chose door A, and that was it, that was solidified. I couldn't change it. I couldn't change my mind. He said, I didn't realize there was a plethora of doors that I could have chosen, that there were other options. And he said it's like his mind got the best of him, and he's like, he felt like he had these inner demons and he just couldn't shut them up. And and addictions always, that's very difficult to work through. So I love that we're having this conversation, because it's something, it's very delicate. It's very, it's multifaceted when someone does take their life, because people that are left behind, there's grief, and we could have done something, and we should have known, and why didn't they reach out? And there's just so much that can come up with it. And I remember, and again, not negating anyone's loss whatsoever, I remember listening to Peter Crone talk once. He's the mind architect, and he said once something that stuck with me all these years. And he said, suffering is a choice. And he said, when we suffer, we're assuming that there could have been a different outcome. But what if there wasn't? How do we know that things didn't unfold the way that they were meant to, or the way that, and I find that brings peace to people, because it's, how do we know? We don't know. We don't know if we had made that call, if we had done something different, if we have no idea if that would have changed the outcome. And so I think it's it's a beautiful conversation to have, because it's so fantastic. Are you and Colin writing a book? Have you written books?
I will be writing a book. I've started. Yeah, I've started. There's a couple books that I have in mind, but yeah, but that's the starting process. But that's a whole nother show.
That's a whole other show. We'll have you back on when we've got the book on the airwaves.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think that's just so powerful. You'd mentioned Elbow Falls. That's where I go to find heart rocks from my son Jack.
Right.
And I love it. I love getting out there, and there's no one can get in touch with me. It's like there's some spots where I can see there's one little bar on my cell phone, but for the most part, it's like I am completely unplugged. It's just so beautiful out there. I love it. Just love the energy out there. So powerful.
Absolutely. Yep, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And for those of you who are not familiar with Alberta, it's about a 45-minute drive.
And scenic and beautiful.
It's beautiful. Oh, I can't wait till fall, till the leaves start changing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's going to be so good. It's so good.
Absolutely.
And now I love the work that you do with helping people realize that they're not just here in this physical body having this life, that they are a spirit, or they have a higher self, that they have guides on the other side. Now, would you share a little bit about your work with awakening people to more to their higher self?
I find it's so interesting that even with the connection with my higher self, my first experience with that was the acknowledgement with, like, just sharing that story I shared with you about the truck light. I do feel like that was the higher self stepping forward, but at such a young age, not really understanding what that was. I just thought it was just captivating and beautiful, and like, oh my gosh, such peace. And I do feel at that time, in hindsight, that that's what that was, my higher self showing me that this is where I'm meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And just having that peace and that security and just that knowing that it's going to be okay. It's a little scary right now, but you're going to be okay. So then you flash forward to, I remember staying at, or moving into my house, another one of the houses. And I remember going to bed. And so my kids would have been in their teens. I have 3 children. My oldest is 33, 22, and 23. But my 2 younger children were, I think they were sleeping, because it would have been about 2 o'clock in the morning-ish. And I went to bed, and I don't sleep with any noise. So I didn't have a fan on, and I was, I'm single, so I was by myself. And and I'm just hitting that stage, that lovely, blissful stage. And all of a sudden I hear, Charlotte. And I sprang up out of bed, and I went, what? And it was so funny because it didn't scare me, but it startled me. Like, it didn't freak me out, but it startled me. And I got up and I went to the window, and I'm looking out, and I'm like, I see black street lights. Nobody's out there. And I went, what the crap was that? So I went back to bed, and went back to sleep. Like I said, I wasn't scared, and I didn't understand what that was. And then all of a sudden, voices. Like, I mean, I was hearing voices, but this is my voice. This is my voice. And I was like, so it's like playing ping pong. I got my ego, and then I got my higher self, and I'm like, who am I listening to? But the higher self, what I found, what was interesting, like the conversation, man, the conversation.
Would love to have heard that conversation, right?
Oh my gosh. Like, it was all, the ego is like me, I, like me, and the ego's like, chill. Like, or not the ego.
The higher self is like,
the higher self is just like, bring it down.
Bring it down.
This is where we're going to be right now. It's the we conversation, right?
Yeah.
And then I kept hearing the you. You're going to be okay. You're going to be fine, Charlotte. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
We're here for you. So it was that kind of, and I got them like I, and me. So I was trying to differentiate what the crap. Like, meanwhile, I swear to God, if I were to sit there and watch myself, I'd be like the conversation going on inside of my head. Honestly, yeah. So the higher self, for me, was my voice. So that's what I started to get a little bit more familiar with. And I started to recognize. I remember driving, and I encourage people to try to really be aware of this. And this is what I teach my students. Really be aware when you're in that meditative state. And for the most part, it's usually when we're driving. Mm-hmm. We are focused. We should be focused. We should be focused on what we're doing. We're in the present moment. When we're focused and we're in the present moment, that's when we get the information. We get guidance, right?
Yeah.
And I started to understand what that process was for me. And I remember driving, and at that time, I wasn't working out. I wasn't going to the gym, wasn't really physically taking care of my body the way I wanted to take care of my body. And my soul's like, okay, we need to have this discussion. So I remember driving in the car, and I remember I need to start working out. The I. And for me, it was, right? For it was the vanity part. It was like, I need to, yeah. And then I heard my soul, my higher self going, yes, you do. Yes, you do. So I had the I need to start working out, because I was worried about the vanity part, the physical part.
How you looked, like physically? Physically,
yeah. And then my soul's like, yes, you do. So it was like that instantaneous, oh, okay, yeah, this is happening. This is happening. Yeah. So I had to, so that's again, recognizing, right? Mm-hmm. And then the we, I remember just going, okay, so I remember just dating on a dating site. That's a horror show. conversation in itself. But anyway,
Whole other episode series.
that is, oh, sunshine, sunshine. Anyway, I remember talking to a guy online, and I said at that moment, I can't remember how it unfolded, but he said, "What are your plans for the future?" or something to that effect. And I said, "We're going to change the world." And he went, "Okay, you know what? I think I need to go and get my eyes removed. So I'm gonna let you go. Bye, crazy lady. Bye." Never heard from him again. But I do feel like that was the higher self connecting. We're going to change the world, and just actually physically hearing that was kind of like, and the feeling I got, the power I had behind that, the absolute affirmation, this is happening. We're going to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were talking just before we got on here, that was not my guy. He was gone for, I swear, like the dust was hitting my face, how fast he was running out the door, right?
Yep.
So yeah, that's what I try to teach people with connecting with the higher self. When we talk about angels and guides, I do feel like from my own personal experience, it does feel different.
It does. Yeah.
There's difference. So
yeah,
just like like the first guide I had was an Indian chief, very powerful, very, very, very prominent.
Yeah.
What I recognized with him was he was with animals. My connection with my Indian chief was animals. I call him Bill. He's Bill.
Mine was Will. Yeah, mine. He had the big headdress and everything.
Yes!
Like
story,
right? It's like
like presence, right? Just that solid. And for me, it was like I said, the animal.
Yes, the protector, yes! And then on the animals. Yeah. He was, when he came in, I was like, he didn't say a lot, but when he talked, it was like, I need to be listening.
Well, and that's it. I love that you say that, because he doesn't talk. He stands there, but for him, it's the animals. He brings me the animals. Those are my messengers from him. Pay attention.
Yep.
You know, and then all of a sudden, all these animals coming into my path. Like, I kid you not, Shauna, I had a what is that? A cuckoo? It's a white bird with the big head thing.
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean.
Fly into my house, random. We don't have those in Canada.
No,
not the big one. It flew into my house and it landed on my shoulder. I can't make this up.
No way.
An iguana across the street. A lady needed me to help her with an iguana to capture this massive iguana. Like, it was crazy.
And we only have those here in like enclosures. They don't roam the streets. Yeah.
No, that's what I mean. It was like, what the actual? And then dogs and cats and like, you name it. Yeah. So that was huge. So I connected with Bill. My second one was a monk. And when I had the conversation with the monk, I remember taking my dog out for a walk.
Yep.
And the monk came to me so clearly, and it was overwhelming because he actually pulled me back. So I'm getting ready to take my dog out for a walk. And it was overwhelming, the channeling that happened in that moment. I had to grab a book and I just started writing everything that he was coming to say, and I couldn't stop. I still have the book and I don't understand what it was, but I just wrote out everything. Yep. Went for my walk, and he was talking to me the whole time. He was talking like, and I was sitting there, and it was a man's voice, and I saw that it was a monk. And I remember walking my dog, and if anybody was watching me, I'm sure they were sitting here going, 911, there's a crazy blonde looking at the sky, and she's not really responsive. Because I was walking along, and I was just like, because I was listening to him talk, and I'm trying to absorb everything he's saying, and I don't have a pen and paper, so I can't take anything down. And I get back to the house, and it was gone. And so that was my second teacher. I've had the Chinese guru that's come to me, and he's actually taught me about the Tai Chi and the energy flow. So I've got him, and I've got the Indian god that comes to me, and he helps me connect with my essential oils.
Nice.
And my past life regression with him was, I was coming out of a pyramid, and I was totally in the toga outfit, and I had the sand and then feeling the heat and the camel. So that was my connection with that guide, and he was again with my connection with the essential oils. Jesus comes to me. He's talked to me. He not a chatty Cathy. Not gonna lie. He'll come to me. He'll sit and he just says what's on his mind. He's like, okay, so this. He'll show me. He'll take my hand. He'll guide me.
Yep.
And show me what the other side of like what other worlds I should be looking at, or this is what's going to be coming forward. And he'll just guide me and just show me. But it was funny. He sat down beside me the one time, and I just sat there. And again, when you're on the other side, it's peace. There's no excitement. There's just mellow. You're calm. You're in that state, that zen. There is no drama. It is all love and it is all peace. And it is just pure bliss. And I remember sitting there, and he sat beside me, and he just looked at me and he said, they will come. They will be coming.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was it. And in my mind, I'm like, who? Like what? What are you talking about? Like
what's happening?
Like, can you sit down? Can you write that out a little bit more for me? But in that state, when I'm on the other side talking, it's just like, okay, trust, surrender. All right. That's where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
But and for yourself, when the guides come forward, it can be challenging sometimes. I'm getting a lot better. I am. My ego is sitting here going, I'm just going to sit this one out. I'm going to sit over here, and I'm going to let the soul and your guides, you do you, boo. I'm just going to say, just call me back when you need me. Call me back. I'll be here. And that's the ego, right?
Yeah.
It is hard. I find it challenging. I find it challenging sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something that, and it's, like I shared earlier, when I started doing Reiki and the loved ones started coming in, I sat there and I thought, okay, if I'm doing this right. So you need to line up the right teachers and the right mentors and the coaches and all the people to help me to learn how to do this the correct way. And I find a lot of times I'm debunking stuff that's out there because Hollywood has done this incredible job of depicting what spirit communication is not. We are not conjuring the devil. We are not, being possessed and taken over. And there's just so much out there. And people I find will be afraid of, and you alluded to this earlier, people are afraid of what they don't understand. And then people start throwing stuff at stuff that they don't understand and they don't get it. And oftentimes people, when they start coming, kind of coming at me with stuff, it doesn't happen very often, but when they start, oh yeah, prove it. And then they come at me with this weirdo energy. It's interesting because those people they've had a loss that they haven't processed. And so it's interesting that, again, I love that we're having this discussion about the ego because, oftentimes I've heard, I did a lot of studying with Wayne Dyer, it's edging God out. It's, the ego has its own agenda. The ego is, and, I always tell people there are like two versions of Shauna. There is Earth Girl Shauna, who gets frustrated in traffic, who has tried online dating that we've talked about, right? There's Earth Girl Shauna that has wounds that she works through and triggers and I've had things happen in life and I love to eat ice cream, probably too much. And, it's just, there's that Earth Girl side of me. And then there is the other side of me, which is, I call her Shauna 3.0 because, after going through my divorce, I'm a totally new person. It's like, there's this other version of me that shows up as the best version of me. She's true. She's authentic. She stands in her truth and stands in her power and doesn't negotiate against herself. And so that is a lot of the work that you and I, we do. Yes, we channel loved ones and guides and angels and all of these beautiful energies. But I think a lot of our work is similar in the fact that I teach people how to live, what is life after loss? What does that look like? Yes, we've had this loss, but how do you show up as the best version of you? Because that's what they want for you. That is what our loved ones on the other side want for us. That's what our guides and our angels, that's what all the posse, that's what we're here to do ultimately, is show up as the best version of us and figure out, what does that look like? What do my gifts look like? And how do I want to share those gifts with the world? And yeah, like I used to teach a class years ago. It was how to tame your ego. And we called it the dragon, how to tame your dragon, in quotes, your ego. Cause it's like, anytime that we are embarking on anything new, it's going to start chirping. And it was so cool. I took this class with Sonia Chiquette and she taught us, she said, I want you to have a visualization of what does your ego look like? And mine looked like a Doberman pinscher. And her name was Sasha. And she was kind of a bitch, to be honest. I was like, ooh, I see it. I see you. And then she said, whenever you are doing your work, like you're meditating or you're working with clients or whatever you're doing, she said, you can ask your ego to be quiet, to lie down at your feet and be quiet. And I said to her in the class the one day, I said, she's not listening. Like I said, I'm telling her to lie down, be quiet, but she just gets louder. And she said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have your guides come in and you're going to see them physically take her and imagine she's going outside to play or whatever she's doing. And so that's where I had to start, because my ego was so loud. And, my mother she was outrageously critical of everyone and just so unkind. And so I grew up thinking that that's normal. That's how you talk to yourself. That's how you think of people. That was instilled. And so I remember that to this day. It's like I would see my guides take Sasha and she was outside and the door was shut. And it was like, oh, does she have to come back? Like, can we please just keep her? She's yours. She's yours. Please take her. And yeah, you're right. Like there was this time where I had to really understand, and this comes with the work, right? Like I tell people, people would say to me, well, why are you charging to help people? And I said, well, this pays my mortgage. You don't get free dental work from your dentist, do you? I have spent thousands, tens of thousands of hours studying, traveling the world, reading, investing in myself, so I can be the best version of me that I can be. And a lot of people don't understand that when you do this kind of work, that you need to be as neutral as you possibly can. And like you said earlier, be in that space of love and just be the best that you can be so that information can channel through you. And so it's fascinating. Like I love that. And you're right. Like a lot of people say to me, I don't even know what half these voices are in my head. And it's like, well, let's start to look at that, shall we? And you're right. Like the ego is like, I, me, I, and then it starts to blame everybody. And it's like, I tell people the easiest way to know if it's your angels is that angels are just love. That's it. That's all they know. They're not judgmental. They're not jerks. They're not wanting to drive over people. They don't get any of that, So it's fun. It's fun to start to kind of put everything in its category.
Well, and it's true though, because and I sit here and I do this. So what I've started to do, so I took a monk course because that really, and all of a sudden I'm totally into Buddhism. Like it's just, yeah, I don't stick to one particular, like love is love, like period, end of discussion.
Yeah.
But it was just like for me, the new version of me that I'm wanting to move into is the removal of the I and the me, and trying to, and again, I love my ego. I love it. Mm-hmm. I have to. I mean, I need to do math. Like I need to figure out math. I need to balance my checkbook, like all of that stuff, right? So I need that. So I appreciate and I love, and I'm a Leo too. So that's just double whammy with that one. Thank you. But so I try to really honor my ego and be gentle with her. And I am starting, and I don't even like saying I anymore. And so this is what's interesting too, when we're talking about the higher self, you will notice your soul starts to make things feel a lot more uncomfortable, or it just doesn't feel right. Yeah. Like maybe it's a group of people that you're hanging out with, because you're evolving, right? Like your soul's evolving. Yes. And you don't understand. And I just it was so beautiful. I just did a reading for a lady and she just didn't understand that. And I said, sunshine, honey, muffin, sugar, plum. It's because you're elevating. Your soul wants you to elevate. Your higher self is sitting there going, no, boo, I'm sorry, babe, but this needs to go to the side because we have something a little bit better. We have something a lot better for you. So you need to let this go. Cry, let it out, do what you got to do. Yep. But honey, it is so much better at this level. Mm-hmm. And when we were having the read and stuff, you could just see she's like, oh, it was just, that's what that is. That's why I'm feeling like that. And I told her, I said, and I asked her, I said, when we're having the meeting, And this is so beautiful because the guides are like, okay, so she gets it. Charlotte gets it. So we're going to send this person to her and this guy to her. And I've had my guy friends, and spirit knows when to have certain conversations.
Yep.
Right. And what conversations to have. And I love that they do that. I love that
Yes.
spirit does that. So I'll be sitting there with my guy friends, because a lot of guy friends don't even, people in general, not guys or girls, but guy friends. And I remember the one guy I was sharing my story about the higher self, and he's like, wait a minute. Because that's so weird. And I went, no, honey, it's never weird. There's no such thing as weird in my world. So just lose that word. It's fascinating. It's incredible. It's amazing. You can use those ones. But he goes, I remember being in the house, and all of a sudden I hear my name.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts running around the house like a crazy man. He's like looking closet. I said, honey, you're looking even crazier when you're looking in closets and you're looking under the bed. Yeah. Just surrender and understand that was your higher self. But I understand. I get it. I totally get you, boo. Yep. But now that you know, start to connect or start to understand that when you're hearing the you, yep, the we, or your name in your voice, that is your higher self.
You, we, name, higher self. I love higher self. Right there.
Yeah. And gentle, always gentle. Like you said, always gentle.
Always gentle, always love.
Always gentle. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating. And I remember Sonia Chiquette, she said, I love what you said, weird. And she looked at me once and she said, weird is wonderful, right? And I was like, oh, you're right. Weird is wonderful. Because I grew up not feeling like I fit in anywhere. Like I was ostracized. I was a weirdo. I was this, I was that. My mother used to always say, what's wrong with you? And for the longest, probably 30 years, that was running in the back of my head. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Anytime I'd make a mistake, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And it was just like, wait a minute, there's nothing wrong with me. What? Wait a minute, right? And I find that so fascinating. I love it. I love this work because it really, once you have that experience where you are aligned, you're aligned with your higher self, your soul, your spirit, whatever you want to call it. Shauna 3.0, Joe Dispenza calls it, getting rid of the avatar to be future you, to be the true authentic you. Whatever you want to call that. It is so beautiful. There was a podcast I heard from, it was Brene Brown. She was on Tim Ferriss's podcast, and she talks about, usually at some point in your life, the universe, she calls it the universe puts her hands on your shoulders and she says, what the fuck you doing? What are you doing? She may not have swore. I added that. And it was funny because then she says, what happens at that point, if you hear the call, is typically things aren't working. You could be feeling stuck. Things aren't working. You're overloaded. You're overwhelmed. It's just, you're angry. You're frustrated. All of the ego stuff. The ego's driving the bus. And then she says, then you spend the next little bit of time, and that varies from person to person. I personally get in the arena and I'm like, let's go. What else have we got in here? Like I'm to the nth degree on personal development. And so she says, then you spend a certain amount of time undoing and unraveling from everything that you thought was you. And, people think they're having a midlife crisis. It's not a midlife crisis. It's
that's your awakening.
It's you becoming, right? It's your becoming. You are stepping into who you came here to be. And we all knew this coming in. This is what people forget as well. It's like I say to people, okay, I see a big table and I sit at that table with my guides and we chat about stuff. I pull in my masters, my teachers, my angels, my posse, we talk about stuff. Same thing happens before you come in. You know what your big mission is. You know what you're working on. You know what your triggers are. You know the stuff you're bringing in with you. And then you pick your family. You pick the family that's going to help teach you all that stuff, right? And then at some point, and it happens at a different time for everybody, and sometimes it takes an accident. Sometimes it takes a horrific, traumatic event. Sometimes it's just you wake up one day and it's like, oh, so it's different for everybody. And then you start to really wonder. I started to ask, is this all there is? And then I was in a bookstore. I was guided to go into this bookstore I'd never gone in before. And I picked up a book on spirit guides. And I was like, what do you mean spirit guides? Who are these? Like we're literally, it's wiped. Some of it's wiped and some of it stays. And it's really quite fascinating. And so it's really becoming who you came to be. And I love that. And so it's, go.
No, so it was interesting too that when I teach the higher self, the connecting to the higher self, like my personal experience has been that yes, it's the voice. And usually, like I said, for me, that was the biggest connection with my higher self, was hearing my voice.
Yeah.
And then recognizing, like I said, initially I wasn't sure what that was, but now in hindsight, that's what that was. And my higher self knew that I was maybe a better listener. I don't know at that time, but that was the first connection with the higher self. What I also believe is when you're connecting to your higher self as well, I do feel like sometimes they will show you, or they'll put you in a situation where you will be overhearing certain things going on in your world,
Yep.
that your higher self needs you to pay attention to, because it is going to be something that you're probably going to be experiencing, and that's why you're feeling or hearing that conversation at that specific time, in that specific moment. It
Yep.
is something that like your higher self, I believe, is sitting here going, making you kind of overhear that conversation. But I also believe
Yep.
that too, that when people talk about goosebumps, I also feel like with my belief and just what I've learned is, I feel like when you're having those conversations that you're supposed to be having, or when you're receiving the information that you're supposed to be receiving in that moment,
Yep.
your physical body is showing you the goosebumps.
Yes.
You are supposed to witness. You are supposed to be present in this moment, and you will acknowledge it. Oh my gosh, I just got goosebumps, because you were supposed to
Yes.
receive that message, information, whatever it was. The chills, same thing.
Yep.
So I tell people, like, those are just little things. Those are just little subtleties
Yep.
that are making you pay attention to the physical, visually seeing it, because you're not picking up on what you're hearing or
Yep.
what higher self is laying down. So we're going to show you, and we're going to get you chills just to get you to pay attention.
Yeah. I love that, right? Because it's, sometimes people are like, well, why can't I just sit down and people say to me, they with opening their spiritual gifts, are like, I want to see my loved ones on the other side and have a conversation with them. And I say to them, well, wouldn't we all? Right. And I said, it depends on how your gifts work. Depends on how your gifts work. And it's like training for a marathon. What do you need to do to train for a marathon? You're going to eat differently. You're going to train differently. Your sleep is different. You're drinking more water. You have special shoes. Da, 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 da. I mean, your world shifts when you start training for something. Same thing with your spiritual gifts, right? Like I always tell people, on the days I work with clients, I meditate twice a day. I eat different. I don't talk a whole lot. We do still have a dance party in the morning, but my day looks different on those days, the days that I teach. I'm sure the same thing is for you, because we're bringing through so much energy. And we have a certain amount of that energy. So we need to make sure we're nice and topped up to be able to do that. And so it's fascinating with people, because and with Reiki as well, right? With energy work, it's like a rotor-rooter. It's going to go through and chew up what is not you, what doesn't need to be there, what isn't serving you, to make more room for who you truly authentically are. And so, and that's, it takes work. And a lot of people will, once it starts rearing its head, nobody wants to go into their childhood, but that's where this stuff landed, right? Like I tell people, those first 7 years, you're in theta brainwave. You are a sponge soaking up the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And a lot of it's passed down because people they're not conscious of what they're passing down. They haven't learned to love themselves. Yep. So then it comes back to, right, learning to love yourself. And that's I believe, the true gift of making that connection with your higher self and embodying the higher frequencies and the higher energies. And, we can't eradicate the ego, but we can love it and we can understand it, and it has a place in our life. We need it. And so
absolutely.
Yeah. And am I like this all the time? No. Like I said earlier, I mean, there's Earth Girl version, and she gets spicy and angry and frustrated and all of it. And I still have stuff I'm working on. But then there's this other version of me. And so the work becomes, I want to hang over on this side a little bit more. I don't want to be angry. And I find a lot of people on the planet, it's like misery loves company. People are choosing to suffer, and they think I'm judging them when I say that, but I'm not. It's a choice. You can get up in the morning and choose happiness, choose suffering. And we oscillate between the two. I get it. Some days I'm miserable, but it's like, it literally is a choice. And it's like, and we're so conditioned to that. It's almost like it's noble to suffer. It's noble to be in pain and relive the trauma. And they want to hang on to the story. And it's like, you could do that, but there's also another way. You could put all of that down, and then you can decide to design the life that you really would love to live.
What I liked, 100%, what I love about my own journey is that I feel like, I've always said that I've had exactly what you said. I've got two people. There's Charlotte, the human, and then there's exactly what you said, the authentic Charlotte.
Yeah.
That is who I want to, and what I strive to become. Because in my growth, I see all this, I see, glimpses, or I feel, not even that I see, but I feel this authentic Charlotte is just so loving and pure. And you can tell the difference. You really,
yeah. Yes.
And I tell people, like I tell my students, you have exactly what you said. You have a choice. The empowering and beautiful thing is, you have a choice. You can stay in your victim mode. And honey, I'm not judging, because I've been there and I've done that. Sometimes it's the easiest. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not in the mood to be strong today. I'm going to sit in my victim. But then I feel like I pull myself out, or my higher self pulls my sorry little ego ass up and just goes, look, you've done this before.
Yes.
You can sit and wallow. We'll let you. But you know what it feels like to win and overcome.
Yes.
So are you going to sit here and wallow, or are you going to overcome like you've overcome everything else in your life?
Yep.
You choose, but the feeling is very different, and it's very empowering. Once you acknowledge that you're going to go through, and I tell my students this, once you acknowledge and you're ready for the fight, it's going to be a fight, but the victory, sunshine, is all that matters, because you went through that process, because now you've escalated, and you're going to be helping another come through the exact same thing you just went through.
Exactly.
If that does not inspire you enough in itself, that's a choice.
It's true, right? It's like, okay. What does Joe Dispenza call it? He says, instead of focusing on the life that you've already led, why not focus on the life that you would really like to have? And some people are like, oh, it's airy-fairy and you're not being realistic, and life is hard, and you got to work hard, and you got to do this, and it's like, sure, do we have responsibilities and we got to pay to keep the lights on? Yes. And we got to take care of stuff. Yes. But you can do it in a miserable state, or you can do it in a happy state. And, this is a lot of the stuff I did with Tony Robbins years ago was, what is the state that you're occupying? What is that? Is it misery? Do you wake up in the morning? And Joe Dispenza talked about this a lot too. He said, most people wake up in the morning and their mind just starts going into what was wrong. What was wrong yesterday? And I hated that, and that didn't work. And then the mind, it gets on a hamster wheel, and then it goes and finds more. It's like, yeah, remember this? Remember this? Oh yeah. Remember this person said this? And remember this? I used to say this about my mother all the time. This was fabulous. I said to her once, I said, it's like you have this pantry full of all of these little jars full of stuff from the past, little past hurts and, wrongdoings and all of this negative, hurtful, toxic stuff. And you've kept all of these jars over the years. And then out of nowhere, you will go in and start opening them and start spraying them on people and start bringing this stuff up. And it's just like, oh my gosh. And you mentioned this earlier too. It's really, when you step onto this path, you're going to lose relationships because people are not going to want to grow with you. And
they're not supposed to.
They're not supposed to, right? Season, a reason, a lifetime. And it's like, cool. And I've lost so many friendships over the years, and I thought, oh my God, is there something wrong with me? No, there isn't, because they don't want to step up. They don't want to grow. They don't want to let go of their stories.
Preach.
And that's okay. Right. And that's okay. And it's like, now I get to a point where I'm not beating myself up and I'm not beating the other person up. It's like, cool. I trust that if you're meant to be in my world, you will be. And I send you love and blessings because I know you're working on your own stuff. And that's okay. And maybe at some other point we will meet up again. And if we don't, that's okay too. There are what, 8 billion people on the planet? I got stuff to do. And it was funny because I didn't realize I was holding on to people too. Like for the longest time, I would hold on to people and then it would be like something would happen and I would be like, oh, that doesn't feel good. This relationship has shifted. Oh, I don't think we're meant to be this close or in each other's worlds at all. And then I would end the relationship or step away from the relationship and then they would come back and I'd let them come in and then it would escalate. It would have to get even uglier. And then it would end again and they would go away and then they would come back. And I'm like, what if I just didn't let them back in? And I think it's a lot of, I don't know if you found this, but I found that it's really about boundaries. It's when we come back to self-love, when I'm not abandoning myself and I love myself and I value myself. And that's work in progress some days. Some days I'm really good. Some days not so much. But it's when you are your own protector, when you know that you have your back, the universe has your back, right? Your loved ones have your back. When you have that core that everything is going to be okay, then you can take that leap of faith and step into, more of what you're here to share and experience. And I find that over the years, it's almost like I've become a recluse at times. Yes, I'm very public and I do a lot on social media and I teach and I do all the things. But when I'm home alone, that's my sacred time. So if you want to spend time with me, it has to be something that's more fun than me being at home by myself.
Like, yeah, I preach because it's the same thing. Like, I mean, when we're called to do the work and just serious about it, like I'm not gonna lie. At the beginning, it was fun. It was interesting. It was exciting, and I was like, "Yay! I get to help people." Absolutely, and that was the huge part of it. Yep. Then I recognized that my soul still if I want to continue to do this work, I have to do that soul work. And again, it is a choice. Yes. It's a choice. And I felt, you know what? It feels so, if I can help with this part of who I am, this, just recognizing that I have this loveliness and I can share that with people. So what happens if I really start to do the work on myself? What would happen then? Who could I help then? Yep. And I have that. And again, it's that choice. And I understand, I almost look at it like when I come across something in my world that I know that I have to acknowledge, and I know that it's a lesson, and I know that I have to learn. I sit here and I go, okay, oh crap. But then I sit here and go, no, I need to do this. I got to do this. And it's almost like it's that duplistic, conversation in the head, and the higher self's like, you got this, boo. We're here. We got you. It's gonna suck, yeah. But you're strong. You can do this. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, and then I drudge through it. And sometimes, like you said, I wake up and I go, really? But I allow myself. So I like I said, I do recognize, and I tell people this too, be gentle. Be gentle. It's a work in progress. And I love the I that I am, the physical I of the ego. I am that person and I need to honor that. I'm going to ball my face out. I'm going to chow down on chocolate. I'm going to stuff my face with chips. Yes. And if I want to do that, I'm going to give myself that permission to do that for the day, maybe the 2 days. But then after a while, I'm going to go, okay, I'm ready. Let's do this. Let's do it. Yeah. So I always, like I tell people with the higher self, just be gentle. It is a work in progress. Like there is no such thing as perfection. No. When you are evolving, mm-hmm. Those who choose to evolve make a choice of understanding it's not going to be easy. The strong persevere. Those who are not ready to make that transition, that is okay too. Mm-hmm. But those who are ready to step into that higher self, that of who they are, the authenticness of who they were when they originally came and even before they landed on this physical plane, they're meant to go through all of those. It's time to go through those hurdles. Their soul is ready. Let's do this. If you get set back, then that's okay too. But just know that you made it this far. Start again here and continue forth. it's a work in progress. It really is. So you got to just be gentle on yourself.
I love that. I love our whole conversation. And I know that we'll be doing more. We'll have you back for more episodes because it's, yeah, I think it's opened up a whole new way of looking at things for people. And I'm excited for everyone to hear this episode because it's important work. And you're right. It does take work, and the rewards are so incredible. There was someone that came to me years ago and she was like, I just want to heal and get rid of all this stuff and be done with it. And I said, you're never done. And she looked at me, she goes, what? I said, you are never done. I said, it gets easier. I said, it gets easier. You get rid of the big stuff, the big things that happened. But I said, it gets easier. And then you have this resilience that you didn't know you had, and you're able to shift through and work through and get stuff. And I called our spiritual toolbox. I said, you've got stuff in your spiritual toolbox that will help with this. And then when you get stuck, that's when you find the right person to help you work through things. And so I think it's so enlightening and just so fantastic. Would you tell everyone where they can find you, what classes, what you have coming up? Tell us everything.
Well, I do. If you wanted to book a reading with me, you can go to thesilverlininghealer.com is my website. I do offer classes. I do update my, usually on Facebook. And on Facebook, it's under Charlotte Lomenda. Okay. I do have Silver Lining Healer, but I do most of my posts on Charlotte Lomenda. And that's also, my Instagram is the Silver Lining Healer.
Okay. And we will have all of that in the show notes for everyone so they can find you and follow you.
And that's when I make my announcements too of where I'm going to be touring and where I'm going to be offering classes and such. But yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. And thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was like you said, it's wonderful when you can talk to people and just have a beautiful, beautiful conversation. Absolutely. Beautiful conversation.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can find me on Instagram at Shauna Domalain Medium, or visit my website at livealifeyoulove.org, where you'll find my offerings, including my Growing Up in Heaven program that teaches you how to make the connection with your son or daughter on the other side. Thank you for listening, and see you next time here on the Oracle of Light.